keynote speech. It's my great honor to present to you our keynote speaker today, who is a trained historian. Dr. Philippe Peycam has worked as founding director of the Center for Khmer Studies for 10 years. From 2010 to 2011, he was a fellow in the Institute of Peace Jennings Randolph in the United States, and currently he is the director of the International Institute for Asian Studies, as well as a visiting research fellow at the Institute of Southeast Asian Studies in Singapore. Please join me in welcome Dr. Philippe Peycam.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for Professor Young for inviting me for this very, I think, solemn occasion for me. I just ask you to bear with me. I've just arrived yesterday evening from Amsterdam, but I'm okay. Yes, President Young and distinguished guests and NTUA students, it's a great pleasure for me to be here. As the lady mentioned before, I'm not by training art specialist. I'm a historian, but I've been focusing on Southeast Asia. And I was involved, especially in the context of Cambodia, in capacity building initiative that aimed to build or rebuild a community of Cambodian creative leaders in the context of post-war reconstruction. So it makes a connection with the previous presentation, art and war. And I felt personally, I experienced myself the importance of the arts in the context of rebuilding social fabric in a war-affected environment. And just to remember that during the period of the Khmer Rouge and at the end of the Khmer Rouge period in '79, you had this flow of refugees, Cambodian refugees in a number of camps in Thailand. For many of those very destitute people and in terrible situations, their first initiative was not even to organize themselves to study the language, or it was to study art forms, especially dance or weaving, textile weaving. So it's interesting that in the most extreme situation, maybe one of the binding elements of society comes naturally among people, and these are art forms or craft forms. So I was very much mindful of that when I was in Cambodia, and as I learned how the art training and craft actually are extremely integrative forms of knowledge, and that was a very good lesson for me as a social scientist, actually historian, in a more traditional academic way. But anyway, for now 4 years, I've been working at the International Institute for Asian Studies, IIAS. Next. Okay, thank you. So IIAS is an institute located in the Netherlands. As the name tells, International Institute for Asian Studies. It's an interesting, I think, institutional creature in the sense that it has an open international mandate. So though it is a national institution meant to promote knowledge about Asia in all aspects, from the beginning the idea was that in order to achieve its objective, this institute should not be bound by limited to some disciplines or to dealing in only limited national environment. So that's how IIAS has been conceived. Next. Okay, that's our office. One of the beautiful buildings in France that you can see. The canal, typical Dutch urban landscape. Next. Yeah, okay, that's again in the city. Yeah, well, okay, I should say something. So, IIAS it's a small institute. It has 17 staff, and its objective is very much to promote, as I say, Asian studies without having to teach. So we are lucky in that sense, and it's an interesting setup in the sense that we are independent from universities, although we are technically connected to University of Leiden. And that means that we receive funding directly from the Ministry of Education, although it is channeled through the University of Leiden, so we have to be good friends of the University of Leiden. But we can work with everybody. And again, I think I want to stress this institutional setup, which is quite unique, even in the Netherlands, because I think it has helped us to be very creative in tailoring programs, initiatives, without being limited to the traditional, university environment type of range of programs. And it is located in the city of Leiden, as I mentioned, which also incorporates many other institutes working on area studies or regional studies, including, of course, the University of Leiden is, you certainly know, it's one of the oldest universities in Europe. It's the oldest university in the Netherlands and in the Protestant part of Europe. And it has had from the beginning a very old, ancient tradition of studies of non-European or non-Western cultures and civilization, starting from its, I think, religious origin, with the studies of classical Hebrew and Arabic, and then by extension into Chinese, Sanskrit, and other major civilizational languages and cultures. And today it is, together with all these smaller institutes on African studies, Indonesian studies, you have so many little enclaves of regional studies in this small town, like Classical Chinese Music Institute, for example, that at the end you really have a major concentration of people who focus on various not only disciplines but also sectors of intellectual knowledge, cultural knowledge of non-Western context. Okay, so my presentation is very much about programs and institutional development and activities. So I need to give you a sense of the different points of the Institute's agenda. One has to do, of course, to encourage a multidisciplinary and comparative study of Asia. Another one is to promote national and international cooperation, as you can see, and to mediate between academic and non-academic institutes. That's also very important, and beyond all these things, to serve very much as a clearinghouse of knowledge. This means that we can very much, first of all, I would say that IIAS is of a later generation in institution building, knowledge institution building process in the Netherlands and in Europe, actually, in the sense that you have, as I mentioned, for the University of Leiden, originally knowledge of what we call later, we came to call Orientalist knowledge, very much textual based, that has to do very much with the, I would say, the biblical tradition in the West. And this was superseded by knowledge for more practical purposes in the context of the colonial Western European expansion. And so you also have that in the context of Leiden, for instance. So there's an institute on Indonesian studies which dates from the 19th century when Indonesia was part of the Dutch Empire. And then you have, after the Second World War, these more traditional area studies, I think traditional as we know them, especially in the United States, of regional focused for strategic purpose centers. And now you have, and with IIAS, this later version which really incorporates the notion of global connection and global flows, and the fact that beyond categories, being national, being regional, and being also disciplinary and even sectorial, beyond the humanities and the social science as they are studied in university environment, knowledge is a constant, ongoing process in the making. And that's how I think IIAS, at IIAS we are able to capture that openness, and we do it in our programs. Next. So classically, IIAS runs a number of activities like fellowship programs, so don't want to go too much on that, although it's a postdoctoral program, and we receive up to 50 fellows a year from all over the world, and under working, I will explain more further in more details, under three broad themes, which have to do with heritage, the urban phenomenon in the Asian context, and the global interactions. And so the fellows stayed up to 10 months, so there's a lot of connections and interaction that can take place between these fellows during that period, their period of their appointment. So we are very much a kind of a breeding ground environment. And you saw the building, the small building, the fellows are very much integrated with the staff. So we can change or evolve in our programs or in our orientation quite quickly because of our mingling with visiting researchers and scholars. We have a special fellowship program, and I will talk more further about that, on Asia and Africa. That's something also that I will mention in more details, in the sense that we want to go beyond the generic knowledge about Asia as it has been framed in many ways from a Western perspective or Western-centered perspective. So in order to go beyond this kind of binary or bipolar connection, we thought that a third perspective may be helpful. I will go more into details. And then we host a number of what we call chairs, which are co-funded by a number of national agencies, including Taiwanese Studies chair, but also Indian Studies, Korean Studies, and we have our own visiting professor position in Heritage Studies. Next, okay. We also run a series of publications. The IIAS newsletter, okay, I brought a copy here. I'm not trying to publicize for the sake of it, but it's a unique tool in a sense that it is the main periodical on Asian studies that is truly global, and that collects material and short articles from scholars from all over, scholars and artists and practitioners from every corner. And it comes out 3 or 4 times a year, and it has a turnout of almost 20,000 subscriptions worldwide. So it's a very it is very helpful when you want to get a sense of what is being studied, what are the debates among humanities, social science, across the world. So anyway, this is something, if you want to subscribe, it's free, and you can receive it on paper or electronic format. And we have, of course, also publications. Next. Where we are very good, and I think maybe it's also a very Dutch tradition, is in network building. And we are a very extrovert institute, in the sense that, first of all what we do is collaborative. We never do things by ourselves. And we make sure that actually almost 2/3, if not 3/4 of all our activities take place outside the Netherlands or Leiden. So we are constantly involved in events or projects in different parts of Asia and beyond. So I was, for instance, here in July, and in December we will have a conference jointly with the Academia Sinica here on heritage studies. And we have events in India, in Southeast Asia, in Mongolia. All the time we have events all over the world, in the United States and different parts of Europe as well. So, and one major, I think, attributes or elements of this network building capacity is this International Convention for Asian Scholars. It's a major network. It's the largest global network on Asian studies. It has 30,000 members. It's huge. And every 2 years it organizes a big convention. Last time was in Macau in 2013. And we will have the next one in Adelaide, in Australia, next year. This network is, I think, an interesting platform for you if you want to link up with different disciplines, different communities of scholars or practitioners of knowledge. I don't know how to put it. Pertaining to Asia. So I encourage you to think about going to Adelaide next year. Yeah, this is a graph showing all the different activities. I think I don't need to go much further on this. Next. Okay, because we tended to cover so many topics and activities, we decided to take a more, I wouldn't say focused approach, but just for practical, strategic purposes, we decided to identify a number of integrative themes that could really bring together different, again, disciplines, different sectors of knowledge production in the region of Asia, and with, of course, the possibility of overlap. So these are the three themes: cities, heritage, and global. And I will try to show you that each of these themes are, coined in a way that they are very conducive to further exploration and always new dialogue, interdisciplinary dialogue. Next. About Asian cities, okay. We thought that the urban factor in the context of Asia is now, cannot be missed. As you say, that maybe 60% of Asian population live in urban environment now, with massive development especially in China, but also in India. For instance, for China, mainland China, there's they are talking about 200 million people who will be urbanized in the next 20 years. So these massive transformation will have considerable repercussions on every aspect of life. And the idea for us was to bring together different forms of practices and knowledge about the cities together. It's a very complex process and actually I think also painful, because to bring together urban planners, architects, together with psychologists, anthropologists, historians, artists, on paper it sounds very easy. In practice I can see that there is always a tendency to for groups to fragment themselves again by speciality, and also for discourses to run in parallel. And as you know, in the technicist world that we are living, especially currently in places like China, there's very few little room for people working on the art or creative knowledge, I think, in general, to impact upon the construction decision in urban development, urban planning. And that's something that is very, of course, of worrying consequences. Knowing especially that other examples, previous examples of top-down new cities projects have often led to major failures and social human failures. So we, sorry, go back, yeah. We helped create a big network called Urban Knowledge Network Asia. And we received for that a major grant from the European Union for organizing, setting up some kind of mobility network program in which over 100, in fact it's 130 plus researchers from different institutes will travel to another and will interact with each other with a number of events and activities. This is where I was mentioning about the difficulty to get planners and architects to work together and then to work with a more creative knowledge practitioners. Nonetheless, I think we've managed by being extremely, I think, sometimes a bit forceful into establishing or creating some spaces of interaction between these people. And every, in Taiwan, for instance, the National Taiwan University's Graduate Institute of Planning and Building is one of the members. Next. So, yeah, that's what I was saying. We've identified 3 themes after a lot of discussion, a lot of debate, and you can see these 3 sub-themes for this urban knowledge program sound themselves very broad. Ideas of the city in Asia. You know, there are multiple ideas of cities, and the problem is very often the generic conceptions of what the city should be like is again very much defined from the top. We hear about smart cities, creative cities. There's all these buzzwords that are used often by governments and major corporates. A number of countries in Asia have become now extremely advanced in exporting their model into other countries in the region. For instance, Korea or Singapore, and with new cities projects being developed in China and in India in particular. But this is of course, very problematic, and we want to incorporate a multiplicity of views and perceptions, and at the end, with the idea that the cities should be by and for the people. So that's the second theme. And the third thing, you see, future of cities. Now, though everybody agree on these 3 directions, there's a tendency for the planners and technicians of cities to all gather under the future of cities. So it's interesting how they think that they are, they are very much, how do you say, at the front of knowledge and construction of what the city should be like. But this is, of course, problematic. And these themes are leading to, the best way for them to work together was to develop some publication initiatives, joint publications. And sometimes, well, okay, I don't want to go into too much detail into this, but it's a painful, but I think at the same time very fruitful process. Next. We have, through this network, we organize different kinds of events and projects. Now, what I would like, there's one type of model that we have incorporated into our activities is what we call roundtables. It's, again, the format you know, of interaction is very important. And I'm sure many of you know, because you're also working as administrators of institutions. And we found that a great way to break this barrier between expert knowledge and lived knowledge would be to organize some very localized, focused discussions with members of different groups or stakeholders, including local communities. And for instance, one of the major, and I think one of the best roundtables that we organized recently was in Taipei 2 years ago in the Wanhua area in downtown Taipei, which is one of the oldest part of Taipei, which has been quite, I think, which has gone through how do you say, going down, you know, as a city, as a area of the city, and the whole idea was to try to develop some kind of forms of localized strategy together with the city government, the local groups, the universities, even local artists, and to work out an integrative action plan or strategy of revitalization of the place with people. And the title of the roundtable was interesting, Constructive Contestation. And actually, and I will talk later when we talk about heritage, as we found out, and I found out, Taiwan is a very great laboratory in terms of local democracy building process. So regardless of the big political discussions, this is, you know, I'm not from Taiwan, but I can see that at the local level, people all want to have a stake and incorporate a multiplicity of being a citizen of different, and we found that in this context. So these roundtables, I think, are very good, not just for the regions where they are held, but also for the scholars themselves and the different actors, including the technicians, to incorporate this multiplicity of view in context with concrete outcomes. And then, of course, we have more traditional policy and also theoretical discussions. Next. And just to give you a sense, these are different partners for this network. It's a network, there are 4 major urban studies and planning institutes in India, 5 in China, 5 in Eastern Asia, including Singapore, including Taipei, National Taiwan University, as I mentioned, plus 4 institutes in Europe and in the United States also. We have some members. And we now try to incorporate also people from other world regions into in these discussions. So that's an example under the UKNA is, I would say, a flagship initiative that we have put together. But in fact, we constantly have more urban-related activities from people, basically, from fellows and other forms of participation. Next. Another cluster, and I think it's even more relevant to the topic of this symposium, is what we call critical heritage studies. Again, we've created a flagship initiative, but okay, what we thought from the beginning is culture, I'm using the generic term, the term used by politicians, matters. And it matters very much, including economically, politically, and we thought that there was a need for the traditional humanities and also the, art and creative, again, knowledge to reclaim their agency in the debate of a culture, which tend to be very much now the realm of experts, technocrats, UNESCO-like people. And we think that, who decides what is culturally valuable, who decides that, for instance, Japanese or French cuisine is fixed, on marble as world heritage, and just like if cuisine was not evolving and the result of constant interaction with other culinary traditions. So we wanted to question and we want to problematize all these assumptions that are created when it comes to culture and basically cultural identity. So in a way we are trying to, I would say, problematize and maybe politicize also something that tends to be, again, as I say, disconnected between the people and the expert knowledge. And again, I think, I don't know, but in this context, in my view, it's very important for institutes working in arts to take their share in debates, even policy debates, that decides on what is legitimate as cultural, culturally legitimate and what is not. Anyway, for that, we have created also another flagship initiative. In this case, it is very much through a kind of exchange graduate program platform, and it's also another painful process, but very interesting, whereby we bring together 4 universities plus this university as a partner into developing a double degree exchange program for students to study cultural practices in the context of Asia, but also in Europe. As a comparative, to draw comparison, but also because so many of the frames, the mental frames that we have when it comes to culture are still very much Western originated. And all the debates at UNESCO, for instance, over what constitutes tangible and intangible heritage, all these debates that very much are about the need to decenter notions of knowledge about culture from a European original tradition. Demonumentalize, for instance, notions of heritage. That's one thing. So in this case, by having this kind of platform where the students will spend 1 year in one place and 1 year in another setup, we hope that they will get a better sense of the different approaches that are possible in knowledge and practice of culture. And I would say that even for economic purpose, it's this question of, reflecting on heritage and culture and cultural policy is potentially very promising. Nowadays, most of the programs on heritage are very much technical about conservation, but more and more with the decentralization process that is taking place in major countries like in India, Indonesia, and even China, many municipalities, regional governments need people who can ask themselves questions about what kind of policy we should do in cultural terms, including, for instance, language policy. For instance, these are extremely powerful political topics, and they are no longer the purview of states alone. So we think that economically, I mean, potentially this kind of program may be also quite attractive. And in the same, under the same cluster of critical heritage studies, we have also tried to apply this idea, this concept of in situ roundtables that I was explaining for the urban cluster, in the sense that we can sometimes develop some localized policy relevant initiatives by bringing together again different disciplines and different types of knowledge together. This is an example, for instance, that we had also 2 years ago in Indonesia, in eastern part of Indonesia, eastern Nusa Tenggara, in the most, actually, the most eastern part of Indonesia, which is very close to Australia, in fact, the island of Dao, in which you have a great and very vibrant tradition of textile weaving, but with very little provision done to ensure the sustainability of these traditions. And so the whole idea was to bring together craft people, as well again as local decision makers, as well as craft people from different parts of Indonesia and from Southeast Asia and India and East Asia, to discuss concretely in an integrative way what could be done. And what came out from this roundtable was a number of very practical policy recommendations in terms of the use of natural dyeing and natural products, etc. But also the establishment of a local museum with the support of the local university in Kupang, in the capital of Eastern Nusa Tenggara. So again, an integrative approach, that's something we think we can do. So again, these are the different institutes involved in these kind of initiatives. Next. Third one, cluster, has to do with, what we call global Asia. Again, these typologies about Asia, Europe, whatever, become increasingly fuzzy, and even more so when we talk about national, with the complexification that globalization is bringing to the reality of what, let's say, Asia is about. You have, let's say, for instance, the Korean community in Los Angeles. This is also part of Asia, of the Asian factor. So we thought that we should try to investigate critically again this complexification of notions that are of appartenance and belonging, regionally speaking. And one flagship initiative, and we talk, has to do with, in this case, as I mentioned, try to break the kind of original binary process of knowledge production about Asia that has been very much shaped in relation to the West. And, everybody knows Edward Said's Orientalism. And this frame of reference also have become constitutive of knowledge production even within Asian institutions themselves. So the idea is to how to expand and to break away from some of these limitations, and with the growing importance of Africa as an example for Asia, for multiple reasons. Everybody know about the massive involvement of investment of China into Africa, but also from India and other countries now. And we helped establish a Pan-African network on Asian studies. And next. Yeah, and this was a roundtable that was organized in Zambia also 2 years ago. Actually, we were very active in 2012. Everything seems to be from 2012. And this meeting was important because we had people, first of all, from very different backgrounds, different parts of Asia and Africa, which is very difficult, plus some people from the US and from Europe, especially, but also from very different backgrounds. So we didn't have just historians, anthropologists, we had political scientists, but also we had artists or art historians. And the whole issue was, again, to frame new ways to engage in knowledge production, as I mentioned. And one of the recommendations was to organize a major platform of discussions. And we will now organize that every 2 years in Africa with the African Association of Asian Studies, which was set up. There is also an Asian Association of African Studies, which is supposed to be set up, but there are still issues between colleagues from Japan and China. Once they resolve their issues, I think hopefully there will be a Pan-Asian network on African studies. Next. This leads me to talk to you about a recent initiative that we started, which very much, in fact, follows or continues what I just explained, what I just described, what we've been doing already for a few years. But we were given a chance, I think, by the Mellon Foundation in New York. And you know, Mellon Foundation in the US is very prominent in supporting humanities and arts, actually, and the arts. And they've become even more important nowadays because of the cutting of funding from the federal government. And that's especially true for the arts education, that has been extremely, budgets have been slashed, but also area studies. And 2 years ago, a major program to fund area studies from the government was cut down by half. And then a lot of institutes and centers became to choke. So the Mellon really helped them to at least to sustain themselves for a few more years. But the point was to encourage them to work more closely together and to try to rethink creatively the way they work. And not just about, for instance, organizing exchange of library or language training, but also in terms of methodology, epistemology, to try to rethink the way, again, about how to approach knowledge of the other in the complexified world that we are. So, interesting enough, the Mellon found that our institute was well positioned to do that in a way better than many institutes in the US. Maybe because of our extrovert position and because of the fact that we are already de facto connecting different parts of the world and Asia in a pretty open way. So anyway, we were given this chance to organize, to set up a multi-years program, 3 years. It's I would say a trial program. And we hope it will get into a bigger one eventually. Along the 3 big clusters that I told you about. Next. Trans-regional, as I say, that includes people from America, Asia, Europe, and Africa. And through many forms of interactive forms of activities, and through 5 themes that we identified. Next. Yeah, okay, I don't know if you can see, it's a bit, okay, well, I can. Reshaping Asian studies through new humanities-focused research, adapting Asian studies to a more interconnected global environment, that's what I mentioned, built on a network of academics and practitioners from the different parts of the world, and raise cross-disciplinary questions likely to shift scholarly paradigms to decentralize knowledge about Asia beyond Western and Northeast Asian country centers. I make the point here because when we talk about Asia, and I personally worked on Southeast Asia, it is always basically Japan, Korea, Taiwan, and North China, and North India, but there are Southeast Asian countries, and Singapore. Singapore should be part of Northeast Asia in some ways. But again, to try to expand the reach across the region, to decenter knowledge on Asia beyond the topography of national cultural differences. That's a quote from Appadurai, which is very much what traditional area studies is about. Area studies was coined as a field in the United States, especially after the Second World War, for strategic purposes, and everybody became somehow specialized on a country or a region that were defined for these Cold War strategic purposes. So these really don't make sense anymore very much. So again, the idea is to break these limitations, to explore alternative Asian agencies beyond reified national histories, and to question conventional spatial configuration of Asia. Okay, I mentioned that. Alternative Asian agencies, meaning not just the traditional textual knowledge base, that is still very much the base of area studies, at least in Western institutions. Next. So each forum has its own range of activities. So the first one fits very well. Artistic interventions, okay, histories, cartographies, and politics in Asia. I read the points, to integrate arts and artists in their social role as artist activists, to move beyond traditionally restrictive knowledge of art as a reified art pour l'art form, and to consider it as an essential form of public knowledge, which in dialogue with traditional disciplinary area studies has the potential to foster new ways of reimagining social times and spaces. Well, I don't think I need to convince you, but in this case, we are bringing together very, I think, prominent theorists, scholars, and artists. And we will have a number of events, especially in Hong Kong in March, and that brings together a number of institutes. Next, which are here. So, from the University of Amsterdam, University of Southern California, Hong Kong Baptist University, California College for the Arts, Asia Art Archive, which is an artist project in Hong Kong, SunArt, which is also an artist network in southern Vietnam, in Saigon, and the Asia Cultural Council, which is based in New York, but which has branches in different parts of Asia. So again, in this case, the idea is very much to help develop, I think, an agenda, a pedagogical agenda that will be drawn from these debates and discussion between humanities and social science scholars and artists. Well, the meetings haven't taken place yet, but I'm quite confident we will come up with interesting recommendations. Next. Next one, some of the events have already taken place, and some people from this university were here, were there. The politics of craft. I mentioned earlier about our interest in craft. So to assess the modalities of cultural heritage, oh yeah, well I mentioned that earlier. But again, through this question about heritage, we want to interrogate the place of craft. Next. Yeah, okay. In the knowledge production process, and to even come up with recommendations for alternative pedagogical models that could be incorporated in future educational development programs. And again, that relates to the original request from the Mellon Foundation. So in this case, we organized a summer school in Chiang Mai, University of Chiang Mai in Thailand, entitled Reading Craft, Itineraries of Culture, Knowledge and Power of the Global Ecumen. Okay, it's a bit, but the whole idea, again, was very much to bring together a number of PhD students from, they were like 25 from many nationalities, under three major or four scholars and practitioners to question their own work and to do some local field work in situ in the region of Chiang Mai with craft communities and come out with their results. And this was followed by a cross-sector roundtable, cloth, culture and development. In this case, we narrowed down to textile with weavers and practitioners. And we had two, as I mentioned, members from NTUA in this meeting. It would be interesting to hear what they think. It was very tough also to engage local craft people with scholars. But okay, I think we achieved something, and we will continue these discussions. Next. Oh yeah, these are some of the recommendations, were part of the recommendation from the roundtable. Craft must be taken as an integrative site of societal mediation, as a pedagogy from below. The idea that through craft we can break the barrier between textual ivory tower knowledge and local, agency, local, and in this case, even the body language is incorporated into knowledge production. At least that's my understanding. So craft forms stand at the nexus of a complex array of interests, ranging from those of artists, artisans, and different groups of people. I don't want to read everything. But the idea, as I say, is to turn craft as a sustained pedagogical model. We are not the only one, of course, this was already explored, but the idea is to, in this case, to make concrete recommendations for potential incorporation into program development and curriculum development in a number of universities. Next. So yeah, these are photos of next of the meetings. And this took place just 2 months ago in Chiang Mai. Next. Okay, well, next. And these are the partner institutions. You can see very different, okay, these are the universities, of course. Next. Okay, third from Asian specialities, I will go faster because they are divided themselves into 3 sub-themes. As I mentioned, the spatial geographies of what constitutes, for instance, Asia are no longer very much acceptable if we take the nation state or a frame. So in this case, we've identified sub-themes that will address concretely these problems. So one has to do with Yeah, okay. One has to do with the oceanic mass, in this case the Indian Ocean. As you know about the Brodelian understanding of the Mediterranean as the crossworld of civilization, instead of focusing on Europe versus Middle East, for instance. This historian was very much focusing on the sea as the meeting ground. In this case, the same. The idea is to focus on the Indian Ocean and the Bay of Bengal in particular, to break all these ideas of South Asia, Southeast Asia, etc. Another one has to do with Central Asia. Nobody knows where it starts, where it ends. And the third one has to do with what we call borderlands. Next. Next, okay. Yes, so this is the one about the Indian Ocean that I just, to revisit state-society relations through the perspectives of borderlands. Okay, well, okay, there's a bit of a mistake here, but okay, next. Central Asia, yeah, we had a big meeting in Ulaanbaatar. The idea in this case was very much to bring people from different, not only disciplines, but also different regions of what we call Central Asia and beyond, to discuss. And at the end, they agreed that there is no such a thing as a fixed notion of Central Asia. Again, where Asia starts and ends, where Europe starts and ends, you know, it's very complex. Next. And borderlands. These a number of discussions are taking place on these questions, these murky grey areas that are called borderlands. Next. These are the partner institutes. Next. Okay, well, idea of the cities I mentioned before. These are one of the things. In this case, for this MELON program, the whole idea was very much to, next, to discuss the impact of the discourse on the privatization of cities, and not just the discourse, the fact, and how to address it and question it. And we had a workshop recently in New York where we had Arjuna Padurai, and also we had one of the New York City, policymakers dealing with housing revitalization. In this case, under the theme of idea of the city, the whole question was very much to again to warn about the risk of the city becoming a space that excludes rather than includes people. Next. Okay, these are the partners. Another meeting which will take place in Mumbai, in India, in December, we'll have to we'll discuss what is called the subaltern city. So the city seen from the slums. So that will be the next aspect of this project. Next. And again, this is going further what I was discussing earlier under the same program about Africa-Asia. So I don't need to go too much. Next. So these are the main thing in this case will be to help organize this major conference, which was supposed to take place in January next year, but which will be delayed because of the Ebola disease outbreak in West Africa. It will take place in Ghana, and we will very much again engage on the epistemological and methodological implications of the introduction of another view, another understanding of what Asia is about. And this will have implication also for institution development and curriculum in Africa and beyond. I will mention that we are going to have a roundtable and a number of panels of artists of Africa and Asia, choreographer, etc. So there's a lot of spaces, so if you are interested in engaging beyond your region, but also with partners from Africa. That would be, I think, a great, possibility. Next. Yeah. I think, okay, thank you. These are my main partners. Now, that's my general presentation. I think, I don't know, I've talked quite a lot to give you a glimpse of what we are trying to do. So, basically, for me and for IIAS, this meeting and our collaboration with the National Taipei University of the Arts is also a learning process, because we very much want to engage even further with arts school and art institutions and artists, and to incorporate them even further into all our range of activities. So I'll be very happy to discuss with you separately if you want to engage with us and with traditional humanities, area studies type of people that we still represent. Okay, well, I think I've talked quite a lot. It's an interesting, I don't know if it was a good, appropriate form of keynote, but I'm happy to have shared with you our experience at IIAS in reframing Asian studies. Thank you very much.